session of Irish History from the Hedgerow at the Irish Roots Cafe, produced by IrishRoots.com with Peter Riley Adams and Michael O'Loughlin. Find a spot on the warm, sunny side of the hedgerow now. Today's session is about to begin. They were rough, unpolished men, brilliant scholars, teaching by the side of the road, in small rooms, in nooks and crannies, wherever and whenever possible. Such men as these, they were the teachers of the hedge.
When I was a gossoon of 8 years or so, with me turf and me primer, to school I did go. Hi-dee-dee-dum-dee-dee-day. I went to a schoolhouse without any floor. Hi-dee-dee-dee-day.
The road with the Irish Hedge School again today, and we'll be visiting County Clare, Ireland, on our trip. Peter?
You know, there isn't, my research and things, there isn't really, and in my travels, really isn't a song right for Clare, as there have been so others that people know and recognizable. But I was at a concert years ago with Paddy Riley. And he sang a song, I like to sing a little bit of that fits in for this county. Lovely little thing. Oh, my lovely Rose of Clare, you're the sweetest girl I know. You're the queen of all the roses, like the pretty flowers that grow. You are the sunshine of my life, so beautiful and fair. And I will always love you, my lovely Rose of Clare.
Well, you know, Clare is just like we talked about County Limerick on our Limerick trip when we went down there. Well, now Clare has got a lot of similarities with Limerick because they were both part of the ancient designation of Thomond, which was a geographical division before the actual name County Clare came into view. And that was, it really meant North Munster, and they were normally tied to the province of Munster. But at one point, somebody said, well, let's take this out of Munster and put it into Connaught. And they did for a short while, but then it went back to Munster. So if you're doing research, you have to be aware that province changed a couple of hundred years ago just for a little bit, and you might have to switch your research techniques to another province.
You know, when you talk about Clare, there's something very interesting. You just mentioned looking for the names and how it was Thomond and part of Munster and part of Connaught and back. It says after the Norman invasion, Thomond was granted to Thomas de Clare. So everybody says, well, okay, that means Clare comes from Thomas de Clare, who this land was all granted to. But there's another thought that says, well, that's not actually true. And of course, when you go and talk to the Irish themselves. But the Irish word Clare, C-L-A-R with the hyphen on the top, means a board or a plank. And the story says a board was placed across the River Fergus outside of Ennis at a place which was to become known as Clare, but now Clare Castletown. And so this may be the real reason. And the Clare was a very important place in the 12th century. So when we try to say, well, why is it named? And I'm always interested in why a county is named what it is. And, you know, the name that emerged out of what it was called, like the Dark Pool in Dublin. You know, it just, there's kind of things that why is it that it's called what it is? And when we look at Clare, where is it commonly referred to simply as a Clare? It's a county of Ireland, part of the wider province of Munster. It's one of the 26 in the Republic and provides basis for government. It had its own little government because in the kingdom. And so they actually separated themselves and then became a part of this and that Today, of course, it's falling all within the modern standpoint.
Of course, you
So
know who helped Limerick along really as being a kingdom. Limerick and Clare is what I meant to say. Brian Boru also ruled from Limerick because that was a very important point and a center for the Vikings. But the Dalmatians, of which the O'Brien's family descended, they ruled in County Clare, and they made County Clare sort of the headquarters of Ireland for a while because we talked a little bit about in our Hedgerow podcast on the Battle of Clontarf and Brian Boru, the last High King of Ireland. Well, he was a Clare man, and that really brought County Clare into prominence, and he had a lot of headquarters right there in the old province of Thomond.
I've also seen, Mike, that the O'Loughlin's, are they Clare people?
Oh, they are indeed.
That and of course with O'Brien's and the O'Connors, and also coming from County Clare is Dan O'Connell. And when we talk about also with county names, Clare is known as the Banner County. And some said, well, you can't imagine that everybody showed up at the Battle of Clontarf with banners, or they showed up at various sieges against Cromwell with the banners. But it became a very interesting thing. The banner became almost like a competition between people of different occupations. The bakers would have banners, and the butchers would have banners, and the coopers would have banners. And then it got to be who would have the better looking banner.
Yes.
And so that they would have contests, so that's where the banner became important. And in the development with Dan O'Connell and his political career, people came using banners of various kinds, and it all, in a sense, almost like Union banners,
almost like coats of arms that were
exactly,
used in older times.
Very, very popular, and of course, so Clare was known for that. Clare's colors are blue and gold. And some say, that coming out also of Brian Boru's colors being blended. And the O'Brien's Tower, which actually hadn't been there until the 1800s, but you've said, the O'Briens are from Brian Boru.
Correct.
In terms of the family heritage and things. And it was the O'Briens who were made the Earls of Thomond.
Yes.
And Thomond, the County Thomond, is actually what we have today as Clare. But and the way it was divided up now in 1568, 1578, the English subdivided the region of Connaught into Clare, Galway, Mayo, and Sligo.
Right.
So we go back in the Banner County, the custom of carrying of those banners. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing about the carrying of the banners. I find that, and when you go to different parades and you see the banners, it kind of raises people's spirits, and it just gives a whole sense of how people feel, and it not just a flag, but the banner, it represents other little things. Now, Clare, also sitting there on the Atlantic, also having to do with the Shannon, it's very, very different kind of a county. One of the most fascinating places is the Burren.
Oh, yes.
It's almost like a lunar-like place. And yet, there's amazing little flowers that grow up between all these rocks.
Some found nowhere else in Europe, and some may be found in Norway or Sweden, and then one or two of them show up there. It's a rare thing, the fauna and flora of the Burren.
Of the Burren. And I remember walking along the Burren. We had a picnic out in the barn one time, but we had parked and we had our food, and we then walked along right up to the ocean where you could see it. But of course, we're up on the hills. And I remember walking and then standing looking, and then I looked straight down at my feet, and I was standing over a hole that looked straight down to the ocean.
Oh.
So I was out over, because these slabs of rock, in a sense, they're so big, but there was a separation. I thought, I don't think I should be standing
Yes,
here.
it's an overhang. And, a couple of times rocks have fallen off like that, overhangs with people on them, especially around the cliffs. So don't try this for fun.
That's right. Yeah, it's fascinating, but you also have to be extremely careful. And people, you could even put a leg down through it and be caught. But the Burren, and it's interesting, the word Baron and the word Burren, it is, but it's magnificently beautiful in its own sense, and you're sitting right there, at part of it, of course, on the ocean. And one of the things as you go up from the Burren and you come up to the top there in County Clare is the tremendous Cliffs of Moher, which has also been called the Great Wall of Thomond. And
Oh my.
you imagine now the Cliffs of Moher are about 700 feet in height, and that's where O'Brien's Tower is. It's up on the north side of that. But I've often found it, and I would like to do it. And from Doolin, which is another small town there, you can take a boat out, a ferry,
Yes.
and they will take you to the bottom of the cliffs so that you can look up. Most people get to look down. And I've stood up on the top, and the birds are lower than you are when you're standing at the cliffs.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine coming in as a ship, coming around as they did, maybe if the Spaniards were coming around, or the British were coming around, or the Vikings were coming around, and looking at that coast and seeing these cliffs that go all the way up. And there it is in the place of Thomond, but it's called the Wall. It just, I can imagine that thought and can understand where that name came from, because it's just a phenomenal sight. And if you've been to Ireland, or whether you've not been to Ireland, you've probably seen pictures of the Cliffs of Moher.
And it's now one of the world's, there's several things, but it's one of the world's top tourist sites. I think it was named to the top 10 just here recently, and they've got a much developed tourist center, and they've even got a parking lot now where the buses pull in. I liked it much better when there was no parking lot and you had to hunt for where they were. You climbed up atop that hill, and then all of a sudden it appeared to
There
you.
you were.
It was
You're
amazing.
standing on the coast. And they put a new visitor center in. They dug into the part of the mountain, and they put this tremendous, it also has an elevator and stairway inside, and you can come up further on the top. And they've put guards because people have fallen off.
Yes.
And if you fall, the truth, no one's coming to get you.
Yeah, there's no way.
There's no way to get you. There's no access to the sea from it. But it is phenomenally a phenomenal place to see, to be. And there's said that the O'Brien's Tower was built in about 1858, and some say that the O'Brien that built that had an eye on tourism. He knew that this would be a place that people would want to see, so he put this tower there, and they're redoing that one at the present time. But he knew that people would come. They said maybe he had a future vision of what would happen, and of course it's completely changed. I've been going for 25 years, and I have seen tremendous changes over the time. But nobody can change the cliffs themselves. It's merely the access of what they've done on the outside roads and things.
And you know, that O'Brien's Tower, just one quick note on the O'Briens, they were from further east in the county. And of course, they're real close there to Corcombe Row, which was O'Loughlin's territory, Lord of the Burren. And the O'Connors, who were just right next to him there, those were the old patrimony of those old families that they say descended from the Corcombe Row. Separate people, a distinct people that were right there next to Breru when he moved up into County Clare and started to take over. And you know, one other thought before I get left behind here on what I'm doing, you mentioned the ships coming into Clare and how it must have looked. Well, when the Spanish Armada came in 1588, 7 ships arrived on the Shannon. Of course, they were in distress, and they made anchor right there on the Shannon, and they remained in the vicinity trying to recover. Several ships were wrecked, and subsequently, of course, they were plundered by the natives or by the army, and the surviving crew was put to the sword. So we have really a very good time coming to relax and vacation there. But at one point, this was a war zone.
Okay, and you know, on a earlier note, this was a place of Neolithic civilization, and the names of the people are unknown there, but there's a lot of evidence, and it's the dolmens. We hear so much about in England Stonehenge, but there are these kinds of things in Ireland in the ancient dolmens, single chamber megalithic tombs. And there's one that I've seen right there in Clare, and there's a number in Clare, but the Palma Braun Dolman.
Yes.
And it's an amazing, and that translates into the whole of sorrows. And you can stand under this, and these rocks, these slates, they're immense. Who knows how they were put into these positions, but you can stand under them, and they're dated 3800 BC. Some of these things. So it's just an amazing thing to see. I said the cliffs. Now, on a lighter side of County Clare, there's Listonvorna,
Yes.
which is the matchmaking capital of Europe. Now, they say in the old days, you could go, and if you were looking for a husband or a wife, you went to Listonvorna, and there the Chakalorn, the matchmaker, would help you out. And he'd look at the possibilities and try to match people up. But it's now become a very fun thing, and people go there just to have themselves, goes on for days, and have a wonderful time. And it's in May. Have a great old enjoyable time in Listonvorna.
And, they said some of the farmers could come in the old times and you'd find yourself a wife. And have you ever heard of Chalk Sunday, Peter? Well, that's a strange custom I ran into, where on that particular day, you better wear some clothes that could take some marking, because they grabbed the girls, or whoever might want to give you some trouble would grab a big piece of chalk and perhaps make a big X on your back. And you were marked as a bachelor and available for the holy matrimony ceremony.
Oh, so the chalking would mean that you're available.
Yes, it would.
Well.
And they have some pictures with men running from women with chalk in their hand. And there were several movies made of Lisdoonvarna and that matchmaking festival.
And I've seen a couple of them, and I've always thought, what a fun thing to do, to go. And along with that, because the festival there's also a place in Clare called Milltown Millbay, and it is a music festival. Also, Clare is very known for its music, tremendous music. But there's festivals in Milltown Millbay, and I've been at one, but I've been in June. Every pub, every restaurant, they have people playing their instruments. They come from all over the country. All the Irish come, even if they're living in England or living in Africa. They all show up. And you go into contests. It can be individual contests where it's a tin whistle player against another, or a flute player against a flute, someone on the ballroom. It can be in dancing. It can be in bands. Tremendous music. I heard a few fellows playing one day, and I walked in and sat down in Milltown Millbay, and I'm just listening to this amazing music come out, and the dexterity of the man's fingers on the tin whistle was phenomenal. And so I left that one and went to see what else was available, and I walked in, and there was a band of a band of different numbers, but there was about 15 people playing, and they were using the accordion, the squeeze box, they were using the guitar, they were using the fiddle, they were using the whistle. And it was phenomenal, and people would get up and dance. And then they'd finish, and then another group would get up, and there would be judges who would be sitting there deciding how it was. Did they play properly? Did they do it right? Was their timing good? Was their sound better? Was their imagination and their intuition on providing the music good? Tremendous thing. And this festival, there's one major festival goes on in July, but I saw one in June, and it's also on the beach.
Oh.
Now, that's my Eastern person coming out. It's right there on the ocean. So people actually come. Some people have little trailers, and they have a little place there all year long, or they rent it for the summer. Others bring tents, and they go down by the sea, by the ocean there on the shore, and they put up their tent, and they stay there for the week, and then use the facility. Everything's open. Everybody's very understanding because of the want of the great music that's going to be performed.
Well, I know Molly goes to the Willie Clancy Festival.
That's the one in July.
Yeah,
yes.
She's been there several times, and her and a whole group of friends go over, and they were taking the dance classes, and they just dance themselves crazy. And then, of course, the musicians are there too, so they go out and dance with the music to some of the traditional music that we're playing, and they just loved it. And they've been back several years for sure.
Oh, absolutely, and I can see why. It's just a delightful. You really feel that you're immersed in Ireland. Also, a great city, and the capital city, so to speak, of the County Clare is Ennis. Ennis is a small city, um, interesting that it still has some cobblestone streets, very narrow. The town square has this huge statue of Dan O'Connell, and yet you can't park around it, right? There's no place, you can't go around it. It's there against then buildings right behind it. I mean, like you can walk around it on the sidewalk, but there's no other. And it's this huge statue. And if you're in Dublin, is the huge statue in the middle of O'Connell Street and the river Liffey. But here in Ennis, it's sitting in this little tiny square, almost like a circle, and the streets going out, jettisoning out, and cobblestone rows and lovely little shops. A very homey kind of a town. Right down the street is the Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul, which is the Catholic cathedral there in town. And then, of course, you can go out and find the major roads that are there. But to be in Ennis, and Ennis is also known as one of the musical capitals of Ireland. Again, they're very, very into traditional music, and providing some of the greatest music you've ever heard.
When we were looking on one of our earlier podcasts on the Hedgerow history broadcast, and we saw how County Clare was really made into what they referred to as a pale for the Irish. The English had their pale around Dublin where they ruled, and they sort of thought, they said, well, if we can't take the whole country, maybe we can push all the Irish into Clare and try to take the rest of the country while they're all really centered in that spot. And gosh, back in 1653, they said about 80% of County Clare was confiscated by Cromwellian and Restoration land grants. And in 1653, they had the Acts of Settlements, and innocent papists were turned out of their homes elsewhere, and they were said, well, okay, we're taking you out of your home, but since you did nothing against us, you can go have some land in Clare. And they basically gave them another Irishman's land in Clare, which was not what you might call a nice way to go.
Now, didn't you say in other times that with the comment about to hell or Connacht, that Clare was really a place that they were talking about because of areas like the Burren?
Yes, and the Cromwellian order, it comes out as a Cromwellian saying, to hell or Connacht. And why was that? Because they said that there was not enough wood to hang a man, water to drown him, nor dirt enough to bury him. And here we are today talking about it being the musical county of Ireland.
Yes.
Is that a victory or not?
Oh, tremendous. Well, it just says about, okay, the rest of the world is around me, but I can still bring music from my heart and bring song to the world, even though everything around me is down. And that's true. I remember being at different places and Irish music is playing, and a friend of mine's mother said to me, we were all sitting there with pints in our hands and just tapping our feet. Nobody's smiling. And she made the comment to me, she says, well, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you Irish? Aren't you happy? And we looked and we said, we are happy. You just don't understand. You don't have to wear it, so to speak, as the old, you don't have to wear it on your sleeve in order to show you're enjoying what you're hearing, and you do it within yourself.
That's right. And you might just see a little tapping of the finger or a tapping
right.
of the foot, and that tells you, they're into it now.
Sure, and that's the smile. That's the smile.
That has a lot to do with the old Sean Nose way of singing, too. And sometimes they'll perform, they'll come up if somebody's singing, they'll sit backwards. Instead of facing the audience, they'll sit backwards because the focus is supposed to be on the song, not on the singer's face or what gestures he might make. Some of those new families that came into County Clare, you'll recognize names like Sarsfield and Nugent, Arthur, Cray, Blake, Burke, and Butler. They came in there and they've got some of the lands during those times of trouble. And of course, you can say that those families became as Irish as the Irish themselves over time, or at least most of them did. And there was one other problem time, even the Irish laid waste to their own territory. But you might remember the Battle of Kinsale that we talked about in the 17th century session we had. And that's when Hugh O'Donnell of Ulster, and of course O'Neill was with them there, they were coming down for that Battle of Kinsale. And Hugh O'Donnell, they said he came down and he plundered and laid waste to everything he could on the way to hinder the opposition, so to speak. And, of course, that rebellion didn't work, but that's just another example of the troubles of the times.
You talk about the troubles at the beginning of the famine. There was about, just a little earlier than the famine, there was 286,000 people in Clare. And by 1871, there was 147. They had lost half of their population. And today, it's still, Clare is about 115,000 people. It's considered pretty rural for Europe still. But it has the Ennis is there, of course, and Shannon. Those are the two of the big cities. And Shannon, the city, the town of Shannon, which, yes, down the road from it is Shannon Airport. The town of Shannon has actually become an industrial park. They're not large buildings, they're small buildings, but a lot of industries going in there. And of course, there's because of the airport being right there, there's a lot of traffic, import, export into in and out of Clare. There's another great song. When you talk about where it is, it's more of a modern song from the '70s, but. Well, there's four of us who share a room. We work hard for the brass. And getting up on Sunday, I'll never get to Mass. It's a long, long way from Clare to here. Oh, it's a long, long way from Clare to here. Just Clare, it's another one of those counties that you don't always hear. You might even not even know you're in Clare. But you go into Shannon, and one place we haven't talked about, which is the oldest revived, if I can use that, castle, or probably it's more, but it is a castle rather than a tower house. It's Bunratty.
Yes.
And there's an amazing tourist attraction. How many people go, and because it's right down from, you can be at the airport from Bunratty in about 10 minutes.
And you can watch the flag flying over the castle.
There it is all the time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Many a photo's been taken.
Many. And so many people will spend their last night in Ireland before they leave, and they go to Bunratty, and there's a medieval dinner that they have, which is magnificent. And in fact, I just read that the fellow who has been the master of ceremonies, or the lord of, not the lord of the manor, but I suppose, what would you call the head butler or that at the times, in the medieval times, he retired after 26 years. And they said it was like a family because they put on a beautiful show. And but also at Bunratty, they have a folk park village.
Yes.
Where you can go and see replicas of the houses or the cottages or what from the 1800s, from the famine period, and even earlier. And then there's a little town built in there that actually has some little shops where you can buy some stuff that's to be reminiscent of what it was like. And then also next to Bunratty is Dirty Nelly's.
And everybody has gone to Dirty Nelly's.
Very famous. So, and when you go, you're in the County Clare.
Yeah, and that Dirty Nelly's has sold several times. Once just here recently, I believe, and it brought quite a pretty pound, or would it be €1 by now? I'm not sure. But that sure is a stop that we make. That for some reason we make it each time. We stop there on the way in or the way out just because it's Dirty Nelly's, even though it might be getting a little pricey at times. And did you hear this is not directly connected, but they're making the price on a pint of Guinness the highest in Ireland of any country in the EU. I'm telling you, but you'll still enjoy it.
Well, you'd have to. Well, you just have to cut out some other things. And when you think of Clare, and I said earlier that the word Clare meant a board or a plank, and it was there placed across the River Fergus outside of Ennis. You can think then of Clare as this. It's the plank from which you go to see the rest of Ireland. You don't always know you're in Clare. You know you come in an airport. You know you may be leaving by going through Bunratty, but Clare is the entrance. It's the plank laid across the river, laid across so you can walk in and enjoy the rest of the country. County Clare.
Well, and I had one last comment, and that's on Dysart O'Day, if that's your pronunciation. You'll see signs pointing you towards there, and if you read history, they'll talk about the Battle of Dysart O'Day, and you think, what in the world might that be? Well, that battle is where Brian Boru's family and his forces set back the Saxons in County Clare for several centuries and held this territory for the Irish, which is another reason why it lay unclaimed during Cromwellian times, really. The history just keeps coming through, but it's so long ago, it's just a memory.
All right, and again, it is so long ago, and Clare, it's one of those other counties that sometimes you don't even know you're there. But if you don't go to Clare and stay in Clare a little bit, you'll have missed the whole experience.
And my last salute to the main families of County Clare in the birth index of Ireland in the 19th century. That was McMahon, McNamara, Maloney, O'Brien, McInerney, Kelly, Keane, Murphy, Griffin, Halloran, Ryan, Lynch, and Clancy. So ends this chapter of Irish history from the Hedgerow. The entire series is available at www.irishroots.com. We have broadcast series on genealogy, song, local history, as well as original publications for every county in Ireland. The Hedge School in Ireland was totally reliant upon the local community to survive, just as we are here today in our modern-day Hedge School. If you believe in what we are doing for your community, please do send us your support. You can sponsor a session of Irish Hedgerow history for as little as $100 and become a recognized scholar of the Hedge. You will also receive a pass or letter of introduction from the instructors here at the school, as was the custom of the Hedgerow. So keep the hedge growing with your donation, subscription, or membership. Thank you. We have been available for speaking engagements, exhibits, tours, and educational events since 1984. You can reach us at the Irish Roots Cafe on Twitter and Facebook, and on our homepage at www.irishroots.com, by mail at our U.S. location, the Irish Roots Cafe, Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri 64116. Leave a message on our phone recorder at 816-256-3360. Copyright 2009.